We're back with Khemia and the second build. I think to mention it actually. If you like this music you can barely hear under what I'm saying, I'll put the link to the playlist in the description. You can listen to Mo's work. It's really good. Anyway, let's get back to the story as the Khemian ship has just arrived on Adastra. At first, I didn't understand the significance of the ship. Viteris's excitement did seem a bit overblown, even for him. It descended in a quiet, controlled manner as the sun made the metal gleam. I did not think it was all that different from Adastran ships. Indeed, it appeared a bit more smooth in its architecture, and it was definitely larger than any I had seen before. But it was simply that, a different version of what I had seen in the past. However, as we waited on the roof for takeoff preparations to be made, I finally realised why this was so significant. This isn't parental tech. This is Khemian tech. Unlike the many ships that fly through the air above the capital, it was not gifted by the parents, the Khemians. This was built by the Khemians themselves. By engineers that were not only knowledgeable in how to fix ship components when they broke down, but how to actually build them. And when taking that into consideration, it is certainly impressive. I've known this to be the case in studying Khemian history and culture, but for some reason it's hard for me to comprehend. It even frightens me a bit as I climb aboard the sibling-built craft, even though it appears more comfortable and even more stable than machinery built by the parents. This sense of awe and reverence comes to a sudden end, however, as we board and walk through the corridor. That's when I happen to peer out the window. I'm looking out over the lake, a rather pleasant view, before suddenly the view zooms backwards. It happens so fast I go from seeing the Imperial Gardens to seeing what I realise is the entirety of the moon, all over the course of just a few seconds. The suddenness of it all, and the odd sensation of seeing such a quick movement, yet feeling none of it, makes my stomach turn. My body leans forward as if wanting to fall out the window, and I force myself upright before the others might notice. Luckily, Amicus and Viteris are looking out the window as well, seemingly untroubled. My sudden lurch gets the attention of who is behind me, though, and the Pharaoh gently holds onto my elbow. Are you alright? There usually weren't windows on the few transport ships I'd been on in the past, but now that I can see... It's almost like when I would go sailing with friends on the ocean, and I'd become terribly seasick. This was all at once, though. Fine. I'm fine. You don't look fine. The big Wolverine sidles up next to Neferu, looking at me closely, which is exactly what I'd rather not be happening right now. Then the stars bend in the most queasy way imaginable, and I stumble to the side again. You are most certainly not fine. Is this your first time in the stretch? Well, of course he hasn't, Nef. The hell do you think? The Pharaoh's moved me away from the window, but I'm already looking away, horrified. Not by the stretch, but because of the feeling growing inside me. I'm going to vomit, in front of everyone. Somehow, Amicus and Viteris have continued on their way, deep in conversation I vaguely feel I should be listening to. But that will have to wait. I'm fine. Just wonder where a lavatory might be. My voice is slightly louder than it should be, though Amicus must be louder because I can hear him even as Neferu guides me through the ship. We're moving rather fast. Of course, the Khemians developed the drive better than the one the parents lent us. I allow myself to be pushed along until we reach a door that opens automatically, without any panels being touched. This area is the living quarters. I'm not sure where you'll be bunking, but we'll be sharing this toilet. We move toward an even smaller door, one that does require the push of a panel. Considering the journey's only about 12 hours, it should be somewhat tolerable, I think. Do you need anti-nausea medication? Too late for that. The Pharaoh makes as if to follow me into the lavatory, probably wanting to help like last time. I'd rather he not see me like this a second time. I'm fine, I'll be right back. I quickly move into the little room, leaving a perturbed Neferu behind as I furiously stab the panel inside the lavatory until the door slides shut. I stand over the toilet for several seconds, vaguely thinking to myself that it's hardly different from the ones on the Dastra, before what's in my stomach comes out. I'm in the lavatory for a little while, maybe about 10 minutes, embarrassed, but also grateful I managed not to be sick in the corridor like my stomach wanted to be. I'm running my paws under the faucet, cleaning myself up before the stream of water suddenly stops, and an unfamiliar voice rings in my head, making me yelp out loud. Apologies, poor washing water limit has been reached. I stand there, staring at my own reflection in the mirror, deciding what I'd heard came from within my head. But how? I feel myself start to panic just slightly before I realise that, like previous tech I'd interacted with, it must be from my lingua. So I respond. Yes? Who is this? I get an immediate response in return. I am Arm, the state-sponsored AI of Khemia. Oh, yes, I know of you. I've studied... I trail off, reminding myself that this is an AI and it does not care what I've studied or about anything at all. You have studied me? The AI asks after a polite pause. This is very odd. Of course, it's odd that speaking directly into my lingua. Con was not able to do that, I don't think. But something else is even more strange about this AI that I'm trying to put my finger on. Yes, I did not expect you to speak to my lingua. It was a bit startling. Apologies, Scipio. I was converted to lingua-only use unless advised otherwise. This is to protect the privacy of all that I am speaking to. I feel as if I would remember that little bit of information if I came across it in my studies. It implies that the Khemians have learned how to access and manipulate the lingua directly. While it is impressive, it also rekindles the feeling of fear. What else might they be able to do if they can fully access the tiny piece of machinery embedded in my brain? Do we really know the extent of Khemian knowledge and power? Is it really possible to do such things alone, without parental help? As I'm contemplating this, Arm fills the silence, like a sapient noticing a lull in the conversation. Are you finished? If not, I can provide you with water-free methods to sanitize yourself. Unfortunately, our water reserves are limited. No, I'm fine. Thank you. You are welcome, Scipio, and it's a pleasure meeting you. You as well. I know what bothers me about this AI, aside from accessing my neurotech without my consent or knowledge. With Com, I never felt as if he was truly intelligent. I never felt as if he had thoughts or feelings as he communicated. I would say Com is comparatively stupid, but he's simply a program that consumes information, analyzes, and outputs a sentence based on that information. This Khemian AI is something different. I wonder how widespread it is on Khemia. The eerie feeling persists as I stare into the mirror, for some reason becoming suspicious of even my reflection, as if it is not mine. I look away and adjust my robes, trying to keep my emotions under control. Now is not the time to become paranoid. As I was taught during my diplomatic training, always be suspicious, but never paranoid. That only makes you appear more suspicious, and I have a feeling that being suspicious of mirrors would be categorized by most as paranoid, if not psychotic. With that in mind, I look into the mirror one last time to assess the state of my facial fur before tapping the panel and stepping out into the corridor. Oh. Hello. I jumped and now I quickly smoothed down my robe, a gesture that I feel looks inherently suspicious. Hello. I pause, trying to think of something to say, though I come up pathetically short, so I simply say what would be most normal in this situation. Did you need the lavatory? No, just check and see if you were well. You looked shaken a few moments earlier. As Neferu confirms the reason I thought he might be lingering here, I feel just a small flash of irritation. He's looking after me, which is kind and generous of him, as he has no reason to do so. Other than gathering intelligence, of course. It makes me feel childish, and considering that it is the opposite of how I want to appear, I would rather he not do it. I adjust my expression to appear more serious, but also calm. A cool, emotionless look. I'm fine, thank you, Neferu. Please do not worry for my well-being. I do not wish to be the reason of you neglecting your duties. The look on Neferu's face is hard to describe. It's certainly not pleasant, and though he doesn't say anything, I'm taken aback, though I do my best to hold my own expression. Another moment of silence passes, and I begin to think over Khemian etiquette, wondering if I violated some type of social norm. Of course, Neferu would be understanding of such things, but considering that we are not on Adastra anymore, perhaps he is now less forgiving. As I begin to open my own mouth to ask what the issue is, Neferu finally speaks. I see. Very well. I shall leave you to attend to your own matters, then. Apologies for bruising your wolven pride. Neferu turns on his heel before briskly walking away. I stand there alone. The low hum of the ship's various moving parts, the only sound filling the heavy silence, when I try to understand what had just happened. I had acted within diplomatic norms. Really, any interaction among diplomats is normal as long as only words are used, and you never state your true intentions. Present an aura of civility, even if your intentions are clearly malicious or even barbaric. This was one of the main issues of pre-Drusus Adastra. Apparently Wolven diplomats of the era routinely took swings at other siblings and even amongst themselves when they became angry or offended. Despite this being over 10,000 years in the past, it's a reputation we still cannot rid ourselves of. I suppose it's not helpful our experimental attempts at a republic have resulted in brawls within the Senate in just the past year. I don't doubt that this was shown gleefully across the news channels for the other siblings. While I might admit that Wolven hubris has been our downfall throughout history, I still do not take kindly to being looked down upon like I'm some type of savage. We have our own culture, our own language, our own universities, from which we take bricks and smash in the skulls of the elite who suck the cocks of all those above them while raping the rest beneath them. And I feel that despite my admiration for Khemia as a whole, they have their own issues with hubris. Neferu is a clear example of that. Wolven pride. The hackles on my shoulders begin to rise, and I work to contain myself. What an odd and frankly childish thing for him to say. I suppose it was insensitive of me to act in such a manner towards someone who so recently called me a friend, but his reaction was oddly intense and irritating. What I then realised is that part of my mission is to gather intelligence from Neferu, and even pursue a more intimate relationship with him. At least if it appeared to be moving in such a direction, but considering what just happened. Not even 1 hour into my mission, I am already failing. I stand there for a while in silence, waiting as though on the edge of a cliff or gritting my teeth and clenching my paws into fists. No, none of this. Either I will succeed or I will fail. But in both cases I will continue on and serve the Empire, for the greater good of Adastra. So, pushing through the guilt and embarrassment and blinking past a blur of moisture in my eyes, I set off aimlessly, unsure of where to go but just wanting to move. As I'm walking quickly through the corridor, I happen to glance out the windows, having forgotten about the nauseatingly bending light, and I feel my stomach lurch instantly. I'm still feeling motivated by my epiphany and self-determination, I tell myself, in a low, stern voice. No. I force myself to continue looking while I walk, demanding my stomach to settle. No matter how insistent I am, however, it doesn't appear that I've gained voluntary control over the mechanisms that detects nausea in my body. Already irritated by my early failings, I force myself to continue staring, feeling as if I'm punishing myself for being unable to handle the view. It's similar to when I experienced insomnia when I was first away from home at university. It was disturbingly satisfying to tell one's own body that it was its own fault for being so tired of the day's classes, and that maybe it should sleep next time. I do the same now, mentally sneering at my roiling stomach for being so weak that it can't handle. My meandering thoughts are brought to a very sudden and rude end as my feet catch something on the floor and my paws flail out for something to grab. I yelp loudly before landing heavily on my side, my paw pads slapping the smooth, hard floor to keep from falling further. Rubbing the left side of my hip, I look down at my feet in confusion. 3 metallic-looking containers sit in the middle of the corridor. My foot had caught the corner of the one sticking out furthest. Huh? There's a heavy grunt that I recognise immediately, and Bruno sticks his head around an open door with a stern squint for looking down and seeing me.
Oh, Skip, what the hell are you doing?
My irritation and self-pity from earlier aren't helped by this new turn of events. I get to my feet roughly, lightly flashing Brunis with my undergarments as I don't bother trying to keep myself decent. He's the type not to care anyway. Is leaving your belongings out for others to injure themselves upon a normal Khemian custom? Brunis blinks at me, probably due to the fact he's never seen me in such a state.
Huh? I'm moving stuff in right now. Is it a wolf thing to not look where you're going?
I'm simply curious as to whether or not I will need to be more careful if I want to return to Adastra in one piece.
What the hell crawled up your ass, Skip?
I sigh and massage the bridge of my snout with both paws, feeling my stomach lurch again, exacerbated by my falling. I don't know, Brunis. Could I get an antiemetic, please? Certainly, a drone has been dispatched to your location.
Speaking of which, I just had to deal with Neferu biting my head off for being too fat.
I turn my attention back to Brunis. Speaking of which, what do you mean by that?
Oh, speaking of things up your ass. Shit.
Brunis winces.
You guys are kind of uptight about that sort of thing, aren't you?
I'm more annoyed that he's pointed it out, but as is usual, my moments of frustration and irritation never last long. Already I can feel it running out of steam. It's difficult to be mad at Brunis anyway. Yes, uptight, speaking of. Anyway, I'm sorry I snapped at you. I'm not feeling well.
Yeah, looks like you ain't.
Brunis watches and I'm suddenly distracted by a smooth, glossy black dome that levitates towards me, then extends a tiny white wafer. I take it with some confusion. Thanks. Do I need water or...
Goes under the tongue.
I try not to visibly blanch at the idea of letting vile medications into my mouth for several minutes. Oh, alright. Anyway, what are you saying about Neferu being upset? I doubt he would purposely criticise your size. I carefully drop the square wafer under my tongue, hardly feeling it land before I close my mouth and it dissolves instantly. Brunis shrugs.
I don't know, honestly. I was in a hall bringing stuff in. He told me to move and not take up the entire space or something. He scurried off where I could probably yell back at him. Are you two fighting or something?
Brunis looks at me, waiting for a response. I point at my mouth, reminded of the medication, while being simultaneously glad to have an excuse not to respond.
Oh, you can swallow. It's made with some weird nanotech stuff that makes you absorb it in like a few seconds.
Oh, Brunis doesn't sound very sure. He's surely right. While the route of administration might be different from anti-nausea medication I've had on Adastra, the side effects definitely are not. I feel a familiar fatigue setting behind my eyes, one that I associated with boating due to that being the only occasion I took the drug. I'd rather be more alert. I noticed the nausea instantly gone. I'm glad for this Khemian nanotech. And though I expect the taste to be bitter and acrid, it is instead slightly sweet and almost non-existent. Fascinating. I say to myself, though Brunis responds with a face of disgust.
I'd rather feel sick than take that shit. Makes me want to sleep all day. Pap takes care of motion sickness and all my other problems too.
The Wolverine looks down at the large crates.
By the way, you're rooming with me. Already push your stuff in.
I take a look around Brunis to peer inside at the small room with two beds on either side, one of which already has two identical metal crates next to it. Oh, thank you, Brunis. Only makes me feel more guilty, knowing that he'd hauled my belongings in first.
Sure. Don't know why they dropped all our shit here instead of in the actual room, though. Yo, arm!
It's silent for a moment, and I wonder if Brunis failed to summon the AI. Then I remember how it works.
Get me some pap. I destroyed my stash on Adastra.
Brunis gives me a knowing look.
Probably destroyed by that asshole magistrate. I bet he's high off his ass right now. For the sake of Ahotep.
I'm confused by the sudden change in tone, then I realise he's responding to something Arm said. I suppose there are downsides to having an AI only you can hear.
You want me to list everything? Headache, backache, stomachache, heartache? Yeah, great, thanks.
Brunis turns his attention back to me and I look down at one of the crates. Normally be levitating slightly off the ground, though through the use of magnets. I suppose the floor is not compatible. Here, I'll push these ones inside. Sounds like you're in a great deal of pain. Brunis shrugs.
Yeah, I'll live. You just gotta give Arm enough reasons to justify dealing it out. Oh, I don't mind you helping, though.
I grunt as I slide one of the cases across the floor, wishing it at least had wheels. Isn't drug usage free and plentiful on Khemia? Brunus makes a snorting sound.
That's what they tell you in Wolf School.
His knowing, condescending tone makes me furrow my brows. Instead of allowing my emotions to take control like I did after talking to Neferu, I take a deep breath and let the defensive anger flow out with it. Snide remarks about wolves are something I'll hear regularly, so this is a good opportunity to practice separating my emotions and my work. Well, I'm not told, but shown footage of addicted Khemians in the streets of the capital.
Typical they'd show propaganda like that.
Is it not true?
Well, doesn't matter if it's true. What matters is what they're using it for.
I decided to let the topic go at that point, feeling as if I'd successfully defended Ad Astra's reputation. At least for now. Brunus gives a much louder grunt as he follows me into the room, pushing the last crate. Anyway, it does seem that you're in a lot of pain. I come to a stop at the foot of what I assume was Brunus's bed while the Wolverine follows shortly after.
One sec.
He stoops to catch his breath.
Whew. Oh, if the aches are bad, I just get a script from the palace doctor.
My slightly strained breathing is dwarfed by the huffing and panting of the Wolverine as he leans heavily against the crate.
I don't like him very much. It's not being able to feel pain is kind of scary to me. But like I said, it ain't bad.
Brunus sits on the crate, his sizable rear covering most of it.
Well, perhaps helps a bit with that. It's mostly mental shit where it really does wonders for me. Keeps me sane, I think.
Oh, how so? I try not to seem too interested. Even though we're not on Ad Astra, the idea of a psychoactive drug like this is frightening.
Well, I guess it kind of makes everything make a little more sense. I guess it slows stuff down so I can think through it properly.
That sounds rather nice.
What I like most about it is it makes emotions feel more meaningful, I guess. I don't know, never had to explain it before, it just feels good.
I raise a brow. Doesn't that get in the way of your work? I know he smokes the pipe almost constantly, so I can comprehend using it for leisure. But important work on behalf of the parents?
Well, that's the thing. I feel things better. It's easier to empathise, and that's important for diplomacy.
I think, wanting to inquire more about emotions in diplomacy. I'm also unsure if I should be discussing such matters with Brunus. I'm spared a decision as a soundless drone floats into the cabin, this time extending a small black capsule about the size of my thumb. Brunus eyes this dispassionately before plucking the capsule rather aggressively from the drone.
Thanks, it's all lost me a solid half-hour, Arm. Anyway, yeah.
Brunus uses a flicking motion with his thumb to open the tiny capsule.
You shouldn't let personal shit get in the way, but it's important to empathise with the side you're negotiating with.
I watch him pack the strange pipe contraption for a while, the Wolverine handling the flaky green concoction carefully so as not to spill any of it. Does it help with distracting thoughts? I can't stop myself from asking. I have, for the most part, been able to keep myself in check for the better part of 2 years. The past hour has left me feeling as if it's all about to fall apart. I realised then how desperate I am for some kind of solution, a fix for this dysfunctional brain of mine. I suppose my approach isn't subtle, however. Brunus leans back and eyes me closely, his pipe held in one paw.
Mate, it's different for everyone, but I know people that use it to focus. You doing okay, by the way?
Definitely. As you know, it's very illegal to possess such substances on Ad Astra, so I'm simply curious about this part of Khemian culture. Brunus continues to study me, and I try to keep my paws from fidgeting by clasping them together.
Well, Pap is just a Khemian strain of Chronoma, which is native to Amorpha. Kind of funny it's banned on Ad Astra when you guys borrowed so much from the cats.
Brunus winks at me to lighten the jab, even though I'm too anxious at the idea of this plant to work myself up over it.
Anyway, you're really interested, I can take you to the Morphin dispensary. The cats really know their shit when it comes to anything plant-related, obviously. They got a bunch of stuff that might be better for you.
Well, I don't think I would. Brunis can clearly see that I'm interested, which only convinces me to back out of this odd, reckless attempt to fix myself. While I know that much of the education I received on the use of recreational drugs was simply straight state propaganda, I still feel deeply uneasy about it. Using a drug to patch over a mental deficiency like mine simply feels unwise. A few years ago, I once asked my doctor for an anti-anxiety script, only for him to tell me he only prescribed sedatives to females. Even now my cheeks burn at the memory. As I'm about to head over to my side of the room, however, Brunis sticks his pipe out towards me.
Want a puff? I know it's not a wolf thing, but it'd be rude of me not to offer.
I stared at the pipe for a moment, my curiosity rekindled.
Besides, it might help you with your issues. If you got any, of course. We're not saying you do.
I stand and move in front of the moment, knowing that the longer I do so, the more obvious my pup-like apprehension will become. So I make my decision and reach the pipe nonchalantly. Well, my purpose is to understand the Khemian experience, so I suppose I should. I hold the pipe and realise I'm not exactly sure how I should proceed.
Oh, well, alright. Just take a pull on it, into your mouth first, and inhale that and hold it in for a few seconds.
Brunis clearly didn't expect me to accept, and I feel some satisfaction in his reaction. I bring the pipe to my lips, trying to let it visibly tremble. I suck on the opening, hearing a soft hiss from the pipe, then a gentle warmth fill in my mouth. As I take the pipe away from my muzzle, a long curl of white vapour follows it.
Yeah, now just breathe it in slow.
As Brunis talks, I suck in breath through my mouth, and immediately choke and cough as that white smoke blasts out of my muzzle.
Whoa!
Brunis leans back and then forward to take the pipe from my paw, then I double over and continue to cough. For a moment I'm about to suffocate, because each time I take a breath it hitches in my chest and comes back out in more coughs. Then the next breath comes easier, and so does the next. Brunis pats my back in a most awkward way before sticking the pipe into his own mouth.
I guess you never smoked anything before then, eh?
I shake my head, too busy catching my breath to be able to tell him that smoking anything, even legal herbs, is illegal on Adastra. I sit down on the other crate, taking deep breaths and doing my best not to fall into another coughing fit.
Well, probably best to leave it at that for now. Wait a few minutes and see how you feel.
I nod, only now aware of the smell I associated with the Brunis coating my mouth and the back of my throat. The flavour it is rather sweet and not too terribly unpleasant. Still, the experience of my throat and lungs burning like they did just now leaves me unsure if I'd ever want to try it again. Brunis leans back, watching me carefully as if worried I might keel over.
So, what do wolves do for fun in a place where everything's illegal?
I rub my chest, leaning back as well so I can breathe easier. Meanwhile, Brunis continues to smoke his pipe, seemingly unaffected by the warm, irritating vapours sitting in his chest. We have alcohol. Saying this reminds me that after learning from my doctor that sedatives were a womanly medication, I should instead go buy some cheap drink in the market. It certainly felt more manly, boldly drinking an entire tankard of toxic tasting ale when my friends cheered around me. And it did help, at least until I began blacking out from drinking too much, and that frightened me away from it. Probably for the best. Brunis makes a face.
Not a fan of the stuff. Makes me sick and gives me a headache.
I don't enjoy it much either these days. I mainly partook to better match the mood of my friends on our nights off. This was partially true, but not the main reason. It also hasn't been the same since. Nothing has been the same since. Why do I keep telling myself that? Before and after. I'm a different person now. That Scipio died that day.
Oh, I get that. And it tastes like shit. Sure, acquired taste and all, but it all tastes the same to me. Just different shades of shit.
I feel that only now the conversations begin to feel natural between Brunis and I. Like a conversation between friends. It's unfortunate that I'm unable to respond. Because I'm dead. I died. And now what is now? I feel an odd tingling throughout my body, along with a tinkling sensation in my thighs and groin. The sensation is similar to the one I felt when I was almost murdered, and suddenly my heart begins to pound. Then I look back up to see Brune is staring back at me. I don't know why he's here, and suddenly very little makes sense. I don't know what's happening. I'm able to sense that something is very strange at the moment. No, something is very wrong at the moment. At the moment? Or is it forever?
Skip?
I jerk my head to look at him, trying to appear as confused and disoriented as I feel.
You feeling it? You alright?
I watch the pipe bob up and down as he talks around it. I remembered in another time, or another dimension. I was on a ship in the warp drive, headed for Khemia. I had just taken a small but intensely hot and harsh mouthful of vaporized pap into my lungs. It was only for a moment, no more than a second, before I coughed it back out. I grip onto the cool metal edges of the crate, trying to ground myself to hold on to something so that I don't drift into nothing. Try to remind myself what is happening. This is Papywei. How strange my cognitive state is so warped I can still think in such a painfully clear way. This is nothing like alcohol. Suddenly I wish I had listened to all the warnings I've been given on Adastra. How some people were never the same after using certain substances, driven to insanity forever. I try to remember if Pap was one of them. A rush of fear begins to overwhelm me. I look to Brunis to calmly and politely inquire for assistance, though I'm not sure how I can be assisted. I need... Brunis' expression is hard to understand as context continues to escape my grasp. I'm at least able to understand his eyes are narrowed, looking almost suspicious, or maybe even malicious. Did he purposefully give me something harmful? He seems perfectly fine as he smokes the pipe himself, as if space and time are not breaking down for him. And yet I feel as if I'm mentally decomposing. My frequent nightmares of dissolving into the amalgamation have suddenly become fully realized. Despite this, I try to keep my expression stoic as a vague, past-self version of me reminds myself not to jeopardize the mission. Or is this the future, where I've already disappeared into the timeless, spaceless orgy of hellish agony?
What do you need?
Brunis' voice is oddly deep and resonant, and I shift backwards, unable to remember what I needed. He reaches out to me and I grab at his paw like it's a small flotation device in a vast sea.
Don't bother trying to swim, little wolf. Your parents have left you to drown forever.
A voice I've only heard in my dreams whispers directly into my ear. It's a real voice, not one that comes from my head or imagination. It's a rustling of dead leaves, rattling out the throat of something ancient and evil. I yelp and lurch backward and suddenly feel the sensation of falling. I must have died. That's the only explanation for this. I am dead, and this is forever. The parents must be evil if this is what they planned.
Oh, shit!
Brunis' big, hardy voice cries out. I'm least comforted by the fact that he is here with me. His exclamation is paired with a jolt of pain that shoots my head down to my neck. I lay on the forest path, having fallen from the branches above. I prepared to jump down and surprise my mother. Instead, I had fallen and landed on my back. It's the worst pain I'd ever experienced. Through that pain, I watched Mother rush to my aid. She held me as I wailed, stroking my head. Ma. Suddenly, I'm back in this hellish metal room. Right now, all I want is to be back home.
Oh, shit. I'll send it fucking right now, Arm.
I want to be young and free from the prison my mind has become since the riots. I want to be a pup being held by my mother, knowing that someone is there to help me whenever I fall. And now I'm trapped, completely out of my element. There's no one to help me. I just curl up and sob, submitting myself to whatever this is, whatever existence has become. I don't fight the feeling of rough paws around me, picking me up and sitting me down on something soft. I look and see that I'm sitting on the bed with the big wolverine in front of me.
Hey, don't worry, kid, this'll help. Lift up your tongue for me so I don't have to, please.
Simply tired at this point, I do as I'm told, feeling something light and dry being set under my tongue.
Okay, now you can close in. Just let her sit there.
Once again, I do as I'm told. The initial rush of disorientation has faded, and I feel that I'm attached back to reality, albeit with a delicate thread. The tightness in my chest eases, and the feelings of grief and dread lessen. My breathing evens out as the warm glow replaces the emptiness in my chest.
Alright, you're good now, right?
I listen to that deep hypnotic voice, riding the smooth melodic tones I never noticed before. Its expression is so full of guilt and worry that it feels as if I should be the one helping him. My thoughts are still scattered in every direction though, so I find it difficult to respond.
Come on, Skip, you're scaring the shit out of me right now.
Something heavy pats my cheek, then shakes my shoulder.
Well, I'm gonna get in the fare so we can help you out, okay? I need to leave for just a bit to find him, alright? Alright, be right back. Just stay like that.
I simply watch as the wolverine backs away from me, his paws outstretched as if holding my figure together with his paws. Like I'm a delicate vase about to tip over. Again, his demeanour makes me feel as if he's the one that should be taken care of, but the sedative leaves me content with simply watching. Then I see him run for probably the first time ever, before he runs out the doorway, the heavy thuds of his footsteps fading away into the distance. With Brunus gone, I focus on the sounds around me, appreciating their complexities, likely resulting from even more complex Khemian machinery. I know that what just happened was a horrible, even traumatic event, but right now I don't want to think of it. The first time in a long while I feel calm and clear-headed, even under the effects of Pap. I know it is artificial, but it's such a relief that I only want to relish it. I even smirk a bit at the situation I'm in right now, at the ridiculousness of it all. I need to talk to someone. I need to talk to Nefero. First, I'd like to ask why the hell he became so angry with me. A childish part of me would even like to blame him for this state I found myself in. As I wait for Nefero, whose presence I long for, even if I'd rather him not see me like this, a new sound joins the cacophony of ship noises. Well, maybe not a noise from the ship. It seems out of the ordinary, especially compared to the other sounds, so I focus on it. I realise that it's coming from behind me, from the wall my bed is pushed up against. It's odd, almost like it's separate from everything else that I'm hearing, in a way that is similar to a hum. Could it be a type of interference picked up by my lingua? I wouldn't be surprised considering the Khemians use it to broadcast their AI. I feel I should bring this up with Amicus, but we should first give consent for our linguas are accessed. Joyce. A whisper of leaves. I'm unsure if what I just heard was real or not. So I crawl on my bed to the wall and press my ear against it, closing my eyes.
Bear it through all to the sea without choice.
What? I whisper back, fascinated and slightly apprehensive. Does Pap make one hear voices? I hope so, because the alternative is frightening.
And now you tread water, putting off the inevitable.
I grip the wall tightly, feeling the prick of fear through the warmth of sedation.
How long do you think you will last?
Suddenly imagery comes to mind in the ways most unnatural. I see myself in profile, pressing against the wall, while beyond I see the shape of something dark and emaciated. It mirrors my position, its face to the walls, it whispers right into my ear.
You are drowning, Skip.
That icy fear climbs up my chest, up neck, and I start to feel as if I can't breathe.
Everyone drowns in the end. And the end is forever.
Skip? I open my eyes, still kneeling on the bed, ear pressed to the wall. The Pharaoh's expression is one that confirms exactly what I feared. I do not belong on this mission. That is what the very awkward silence in the air tells me. I don't move, though I know I should at least pretend I'm not listening to voices in the wall right now. Brunis stands in the door, looking over the Pharaoh's shoulder, his expression even more dismayed than it was the last I'd seen it. Skip. The Pharaoh repeats my name, approaching me cautiously in the same way that Brunis had left me, as if I might break if I moved too suddenly. I stare a moment longer, then clear my throat and pull away from the wall as casually as I am able. Nonchalance is a difficult thing to pull off in this moment, especially when I realise my robes are riding up to nearly my hips through my unorganised clambering onto the bed. The two don't seem to mind, however, as I smooth them back down over my thighs, carefully sit on the edge of the bed. I clear my throat carefully.
Yes?
Still, my voice is cracked and broken like I've just ended adolescence. I swallow back some embarrassment.
Are you all right?
I try to find enough saliva in my mouth to respond in a less broken way, as I do in the Pharaoh whirls on Brunis.
I left him for literally 10 minutes. How did you manage to leave him in such a state in so little time? What?
I jump even though he's yelling at Brunis, mostly because everything still sounds oddly resonant. I try to cover this up by standing in one smooth motion. Unfortunately, my coordination seems rather miserable now, and I stumble forward slightly. This moment the Pharaoh catches me, carefully pressing me back onto the bed. I am well, just slightly dizzy from the antiemetic that Harm gave me. I'm rather pleased with how well I'm putting words together despite my disoriented mindset.
Yes, I'm sure that is the only problem.
The Pharaoh glares at Brunis.
Oh, come on. See, he's looking better by the minute. You're good now, ain't you, Skip?
Yes, I am in a state that is good.
Were you hearing something in the ship? This sounds worrying you.
The Pharaoh gestures at the wall.
Oh, yes.
The Pharaoh reminds me of what was just bothering me. Who was in the room next to us? I heard a voice. Wait a moment. No, I was definitely not supposed to say that. My mind is not working, especially the part that concerns memory, and though the sedative is powerful, I still feel anxiety prick at the surface.
There ain't a room next to us.
Brunis, what the hell did you give him?
Whoa, just a pap. I guess one of those chill pills to calm him down a bit.
You guess. What did you give Skip? Use the room speakers, please. I feel the fur on my neck bristle as the sound of Arm's smooth, sapient-like voice drifts down gently from the ceiling. Scipio, do you wish to reveal your medication history to Neferu and Brunis? I stare at Neferu's chest in front of me for a moment, trying to keep my expression normal. Yes. Very well. Scipio was administered one anti-nausea wafer, 25 milligrams, and one anti-anxiety wafer, 10 milligrams, both within the last hour. He also inhaled approximately 1.7 milligrams of the psychoactive compound ANLA via vaporized Papywei. I get lost in Arm's rather beautiful voice. He must be saying things that Neferu doesn't like. He keeps giving Brunis very cross looks. Are there any interactions among those medications? The antiemetic and anti-anxiety drugs can potentiate sedation when used in combination.
And anything that causes one to hear voices?
There's a long pause, and for some reason it's only now that I'm understanding how terrible this actually is. I think I'm losing my mental abilities, which is exactly what I feared. Psychosis is a rare side effect of Papywei consumption, of which auditory hallucinations can result.
I see.
Neferu glares at Brunis again. Do note that this side effect normally occurs at higher doses. According to the medical literature, no psychotic symptoms have ever been observed in doses below 10 milligrams.
See, he barely took a puff. I've never seen anyone lose it like that, even when they take too much.
I frown, not necessarily liking the way I'm being talked about, especially with me sitting right here.
What about in combination with other drugs? He's barely able to stay awake, he's so sedated. Well, most people won't even feel a thing from just one. Yes, but he's a wolf. He's never experienced mind-altering drugs, and I doubt there's much in the medical literature about wolf intolerance to Papywei. Oh, that's all it takes to get him high, then why isn't he ever freaked out after just sitting next to me?
I mean, has he ever really sat near you? If you did not know, Pap smells terrible. He likely moved away the moment you got close. They go back and forth, and I close my eyes, begin to imagine their voices in a sparring match. It reminds me of the one time the Pharaoh managed to convince the Wolverine to spar. Despite his build and size, Brunis isn't much of a fighter. The match barely lasted more than a minute before Brunis was on his knees and retching so loud he sounded like a giant, squawking bird. I laughed loudly. Voices go quiet again. I open my eyes and look back at them. At this moment I decide that I'm tired of being gawked at. So I clear my throat again. Did you know that it's rather rude to talk about someone who's in the same room in a way that suggests they are not there? They continue to look surprised until Nefero seems to break out of the trance. Yes, sorry about that, Skip. You know that Brunis and I also often get into it. Well, I'll discuss something that does not have to do with me then. I am very tired, so I'm going to lay down now. I see. Are you sure? I am fine. It's best not to worry about me. I half expect Nefero to become angry again, but he doesn't. I feel a semblance of guilt under the drug haze, but I honestly do just want to lay down. So that's what I do, the vague guilt morphing into some smug satisfaction, seeing the two of them left to awkwardly stand about. It's nice not to be the one that's feeling off kilter. I think that they've left. Their voices mumble back and forth for a while, then it goes quiet. And then I fall asleep. I have extremely vivid dreams. First, my childhood. I began attending an elite school when I was 13. It was very sad to leave my mother and my friends in the coastal town I was born in. Still, I was told it was necessary, that my mind was gifted and was destined for greatness. In the end, I found out that while this was true for most of my classmates, it was clear that I had been admitted for other reasons. My first day, the instructor called on me to solve a problem using math I'd never even heard of in my homeschooling. He framed the problem within a scenario that involved rich families and their young living on estates. The solution to the scenario was the amount of money required to bribe a local official who would then secure a spot in an elite school for one of those rich pups. Thus making his point. I was there because my family had connections, and more importantly because they had money. Money has been wasted on a stupid, average-brained pup who could only answer questions with, "I don't know," while trembling in fear. Then, during mealtime, my mane was pulled and I experienced my first physical fights, ones that ended with me curled on the floor covering my face. The experience was humiliating, traumatizing even. But as I sobbed quietly in my dorm room alone, wondering how I could possibly survive another day, I became angry. I knew very little about my father at the time, but I did know that he was the figure to be proud of, Professor of Rhetoric. The proudest of Wolven disciplines, one that no sibling could match, not even the Chemians. So I knew I had every reason to be proud of my family name, I had every right to be in that school. At the beginning, my instructor devoted 5 minutes at the end of each class period to humiliate me with questions he assumed I would not know the answer to. He likely hoped I would quit, but instead I studied and used what I learned to fight back. Within a month I was answering more than half of his questions correctly, and that's when he stopped. I mentioned his name to my mother in one of my letters, and within weeks he was gone, fired by the headmaster who my mother knew very well. As soon as my mane was touched I would swing as hard as I possibly could, fracturing 2 jaws before the attack stopped altogether. Eventually I was at the top of my class. By the time I graduated 5 years later, I was accepted into the most prestigious university on the moon. This is not a dream. It's more of a narration of my past life. But it's important, because I fought hard to be here. I begin to realise that while I believe those troublesome days of my youth to be over, that might not actually be the case. I need to fight now, for my family's sake and for my own. I see myself curled up, sobbing after smoking Brunis's pipe, and I sneer in a way that feels very unfamiliar. But it feels good. As these images of my childhood fade, I remember that the school I attended on the outskirts of Lux no longer exists. Almost a decade after my graduation, on the same day my life changed at the university, the school was burned to the ground by a mob of men from Lux. I never researched the aftermath because while I know most of the pups got out, some of them did not. Because of men who saw their gifted minds as threats. Just like the men who tried to kill me. And while I've tried to understand the plights of those who are poor or less educated, I sometimes find myself doing the opposite. Those men were beasts. Violent, stupid beasts who could not reconcile with the fact that they were, in many ways, innately inferior. And that made me, my peers and my professors, a threat to them. This is an incorrect way to think, I know, yet if I were to strip away all the etiquette, all of the structured thinking that comes with being an academic, I would want to do the same to places like the Clay District, where most of the men came from. I'd like to raise that degenerate, disgusting place, filled with degenerate, disgusting people to the point it would seem that it never existed. Like removing a stain from the fabric of a Adastran society. I want to tear them apart. Because my friends, my professors and parts of my mind have been torn apart. And because the pups burned in the outskirts of Lux have been torn apart. Dissolved into the horror of the amalgamation, they were themselves torn apart before they even knew who they were meant to be. What is this? This disturbingly lucid dream? Is this a dream at all? I stare out into vast stretches of space, in awe of the size and the simple fact that the universe exists. Vaguely, I wonder if I have died, as if the moment I smoked the pipe I actually did die. Or maybe our ship somehow crashed, and I've been left to float through space forever. Or for only a few more seconds where I suffocate. That would be alright, I decide, even as I take a deep, easy breath of air. I'd rather feel this way, insignificant and meaningless against the monolithic oppression of the universe. It makes me feel oddly peaceful.
My goodness, Scipio, if only your friends and colleagues could hear half of what you think. You sound a bit unstable.
A deep but feminine voice comes from seemingly every direction. I look around, suddenly feeling as I'm being spied upon, wondering if the directionless voice is from my own head. What?
Amicus would not be happy that you wish to raise entire districts to cleanse Adastra of its lower class.
The fur on my neck prickles. I still have no idea what is happening. If this is truly a dream, or possibly even the side effect of the drugs. I didn't mean to think those things. I don't truly believe them. I mean... There's a deep, raspy chuckle. One that I recognise as distinctly feline, the one I'd heard many times when recordings that involved Hindos.
I don't believe that, young wolf. And good guess. Especially from one who's never met a tiger. But can you guess who I actually am?
Her eyes are so piercing, so intense, although I want to ask again what exactly is happening, I feel obliged to answer. And so I quickly run through a list of tigresses I know of, only one of which is alive, the current ruler of Hindu. Maharaniati? The tigress eyes me closely as I lower my ears, just wishing I can wake up soon.
Consider the impossibility of where you are. You think Artie would try to come all the way here to talk to some pup?
I swallow hard, trying to keep my breathing even. Whatever this is, I think that it is somehow real. Which makes the possibility that this being can read my mind all the more disturbing. There could be an explanation. Are you Mira? The quiet smile on her face answers my question.
Well, I suppose 2 attempts is not terrible, though I must say that the human knew immediately.
Amicus is human.
If that is how you refer to him, yes.
My explanation is seemingly more likely, but I can't imagine why it would be the case. Mira stays silent, though the knowing look on her face tells me she's waiting. Are the parents doing this? Are they making contact with me? Just like this rumour that they did with the human. Mira is quiet for a while, so I stay quiet as well. Unable to think of any other reason for this to be happening if it really is happening.
The parents are a complex matter, Scipio. Direct communication with them is impossible, unless they break their own rules involving interference.
I try to think of something else to say, but it's clear Mira is holding back information. Instead, I try to be more direct. Why did you bring me here? Is there something I'm supposed to do, or maybe have instructions?
Well, Scipio, I heard you. You are in need of guidance. You are wounded, but in a place that cannot be physically treated.
Mira taps a finger to her head.
You fear death. You fear the amalgamation. Rather, you feel it is an abomination, and deep down, though you will not admit it to yourself.
My hackles won't stay down, and now I just want to wake up.
You do not trust the parents.
Am I going to be punished? They know I'm a fraud on a mission to further parental agendas when I don't truly believe in them. I'm only here for selfish reasons. I realise my legs are trembling. Please wake up. Mira raises a paw.
Easy, young wolf. I am only here to help you, to warn and to advise. You need guidance, and I am here to offer it if you will take it.
I frown and rack my brain for the lessons I had on Mira, if she ever used in this manner in the past. Her main purpose was that of self-sacrifice, to push Drusus in the correct direction for the Empire. She has little to do with the parents. As far as I know, it's only the monitors that communicate for the parents. Does that mean
that this is not sanctioned by the parents? Yes. And do not be afraid that you are not in lockstep with their vision for the future. I certainly am not. I never entered the amalgamation, as I believe that is an attack on life, rather than a preservation of it. And in the end, neither are they. They bicker just as much as the siblings.
The borders of the odd in-between world begin to shimmer and fade, and I realise it's ending. Wait, please, you say you do not have to go to the amalgamation? That you can help fix me? Please, don't leave me yet. Mira smiles at me. My desperation, I know, must make me look unhinged, but I truly am desperate.
This will be not the last time we speak. Trust that I will appear again when the time is right. This was merely an introduction.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mira.
It was a pleasure meeting you, Scipio. Until next time.
I slowly open my eyes, and this time I know I'm truly awake. Despite being slightly groggy, I feel I'm mostly back to normal. I assess everything slowly, not wanting to make any sudden movements in case I'm still under the influence of the drugs. But again, all seems normal. I make a movement to sit up. That's when someone beside me shifts. I gasp quietly, jerking my head in that direction, only seeing the pharaoh there, sitting on the floor with his back against the bed. I rub my chest reflexively, wondering why I'm so on edge. I also remember I had some very odd dreams that I can't quite remember. Oh, sorry for startling you, and apologies if it seems I'm still treating you like a child, but unfortunately after what happened I needed to be nearby. For my own peace of mind. I shift and turn over so I'm facing the pharaoh more directly, simultaneously pulling back the covers as an invitation to the pharaoh to sit, which he does. He didn't have to sit on the floor. We've shared a bed before, in both ways. Well, yes, but you seemed upset before you went to sleep, and I feel it's rude to impose without asking in the first place. Well, now you know that you're always welcome, unless circumstances really change. You seem to be in good spirits, the way you always seemed to be before this mission. You say that it's been a long time. We're not even in danger of the mission, the pharaoh. The pharaoh is correct, though. For some reason, I'm far more optimistic now, more confident, more... Suddenly, I have some recollections of what I dreamed, or didn't dream. It does feel like a very long time, and like it or not, what has happened to you since is very troublesome. Are you all right? The pharaoh catches me not really paying attention. They revisit this dream or even vision of Mira. Sorry, just thinking back on what happened. Yes, it was somewhat ridiculous, but I think I have my mind set in order once again. Well, that's good to hear. However, mental relapse is something you should expect to happen. Not that I want to bring your spirits down, but when it does, please do not hesitate to talk to me. I nod, though my mind is still in the vision. Part of me worries they might be part of an illusion due to the drugs, and I especially don't trust my interpretation of what's real when I was just hearing voices. However, Mira had said something about the human meeting her, and the pharaoh knew him well. Perhaps he knows something about this, or perhaps even Amicus. I immediately have a strange but discernible feeling that might not be the best idea. I don't know why. A hopeful part of me wishes that this might be the guidance Mira spoke of. Despite my doubts, however, with the potential that somehow an entity that avoided the amalgamation is trying to help me, well, it's left me in a good mood. I take advantage of that to try and fully mend my friendship with Neferu, though I feel it's not even necessary, judging by how he's acting. I'm sorry for pushing you away earlier. I could tell it was hurtful, and I didn't mean it for it to be. I simply wanted to appear less weak during a moment of weakness. You need not apologise. That is my own fault. Oh, how so? In the back of my mind, I remind myself that despite the intimate, close feelings I have with Neferu, this is all still technically a game. I should be calculating the best way to establish a relationship that Neferu cannot do without, even if Khemia itself is at stake. The terrorist told me earlier this is an especially promising exploit, continuing Neferu's relationship with his family. That is my job as a diplomat, but right now I'm following my emotions wherever they take me. That is not how a diplomat should do their job. Still, this feels like the right path. Imagine there has to be some level of genuine emotion involved if I'm to be most effective. Neferu looks at me candidly, setting his lips in a thin line. I don't often like talking about it, but after how I treated you, I owe you. So, once I knew an Amorphan by the name of Alexios. Oh, you knew him personally? Alexios, the pet of Cassius, Amicus' brother and one-time false emperor. Alexios was an agent of Amorpha, sent to Adastra to sow chaos in the very fabric of our society, a mission that was ultimately successful. One could say he's the main reason for the riots occurring. Well, I knew him, but I doubt anyone knew him personally. Anyway, despite nearly toppling Adastran stability, he was never a very good spy. He was simply underestimated. And he struck Cassius's fancy. Well, it's easier to be a spy when you have such a connection to the very heart of power. I keep a straight face, but can't help but wonder if Neferu's emphasising this on purpose, because he sees right through me. I see. Well, whenever he found himself cornered, he often fell into a bit of a peculiar state of mind. He would dampen his expressions and exhibit the emotional capacity of rock, a classic diplomatic defensive manoeuvre he often deployed to get out of situations he did not like. He's possibly the most evil, amoral creature I've ever had the displeasure to know. To be clear, I knew he was a spy, just as all governments know that visiting diplomats have ulterior motives. What I didn't expect was a snivelling coward willing to destroy the foundation of an entire civilization costing thousands of lives. I nod, though not having known the cat, I feel a bit detached. Amorpha is always loathed Adastra. This seems to be the biggest threat to stability in the Galaxius. With all due respect to Amicus, I'd always seen the situation to be the fault of the Imperial family for allowing an Amorphan to get so close in the first place. Anyway, when you came out of that lavatory, the look you gave me was strikingly similar, and I simply know that's not you, Scipio. You are a good, honest person. I know you'd never do something for the sake of destruction. And I know that because you are my friend, and despite our differences in culture, in language, and especially considering the history of our people, I trust you. There's no doubt now that Neferu is expecting me to read between the lines here. And so, based on everything I know about Neferu, I do just that. I know they're here to gather intelligence to better Adastra's position in the Alliance and to use me as a tool, just as Alexios used Cassius. I'm lonely and I need someone I can call a friend, a true friend. In this relationship, I know that you have nothing to lose while I could lose everything. But I also know that you're full of compassion and you would never do what he did, and so while I know that you can't be trusted, I trust you. At least I hope that's what he thinks of me. I look Neferu in the eye in what I hope is a meaningful way that he might know that I understand. And I trust you. I simply want the galaxy to find peace and happiness for all. And I feel a bit uneasy, as I remember those thoughts I'd had in my dreams that felt alien, as if they were not my own, but familiar, like I simply keep them hidden from myself. Like removing a stain from the fabric of Adastran society. Could I really think such a thing? Oh, thank you, Skip, truly. I have a feeling this experience will truly change your life and your perspective on life itself. Adastra did that for me, both for bad and for good, so just keep an open mind, and like I said, I'm always here. There's a soft chime, and suddenly Arm comes in over the public speakers. Exit in stretch drive in 10 minutes. Prepare for security check and royal escort. I guess I slept longer than I thought. Not a surprise considering the sedation, but now I'm fully awake. I see a vast moon below me. A planet, I mean. Khemia is a planet, after all, several times larger than Adastra. At one point most of the land was inhospitable desert, but through years of investing and building high-tech infrastructure, along with slightly altering the environment of their own planet, something no sibling would risk even trying, most of it is now populated. I stared down the place I'd been so fascinated with since I was young and found those picture books in the library of that school for the gifted. From this distance it's a bit strange to see such an exciting looking planet. No one would ever guess the most advanced civilization in the galaxy exists on the surface. At least if they somehow were able to avoid seeing the vast numbers of spacefaring ships flying back and forth. A few ships that had to be several kilometres away still look impressively large, which must mean that they're gigantic. At that moment I realised I'm seeing something I've actually studied. The space cruise resorts, each the size of small cities, taking Khemians and many of their children's siblings on affordable high-tech vacations. My feelings of wonder only multiply as I remember that the earliest Khemian history is rather bleak. Despite having civilizations before even being uplifted, there was constant war between what were known as water kingdoms. The planet was always at such high risk of drought that the security of water always determined influence, power and future stability. But as they always would, the Khemians overcame it. Meanwhile, I stand with my face pressed against the glass, gazing at all the amazing things I can see, all the things I studied for so long. Despite the many rough patches that I've encountered over the course of my journey, this view suddenly makes me realise something. I've made it. After years of hard work and intense competition, I finally made it to my destination. My mission is far from over, of course, but now I can actually see it. My goal is right there, below me. Not only that, but I might be the first wolf in decades to have this view. For a moment, reality seems fragile again, but in a way that's euphoric. I very much hope that I am not dreaming.
You like staring at boring things, kid? Well, everyone's jealous of Khemia, but damn is it ugly to look at from afar.
I twitch my ears in acknowledgement of Brunius' teasing, but I continue staring, wanting to imprint the view into my long-term memory. It's a sight I'll never likely have again, especially if our departure has us facing the opposite direction. Khemia is the subject of his study, Brunius, and the first time he's seen it in person.
I know. It's still just a ball of sand, though. At least Adastra looks pretty from above.
I do somewhat agree there isn't all that much to look at. Meanwhile, Adastra has plentiful diversity and seasons to take advantage of. By all measure, Khemia should have been behind the rest with the terrible start they were given. Once the parents established contact, the jackals united faster than any other sibling, fully committing themselves to the parents' vision. This led to Khemia having an edge over all siblings ever since. And all of this legendary history took place right there, on this planet. I smile. When a university student chooses Khemian culture as their discipline, they must have at least one course on Adastran culture that emphasised the best of Adastra. And despite knowing it through all blatant propaganda that was so clumsy usually just left me feeling embarrassed rather than proud, there was a value they managed to instill in me. One should always be wary of complete submission to a higher power. This doesn't include the Emperor, of course, but rather it was targeted at the parents. There's a certain amount of pride that comes with being the most rebellious sibling race, though the Amorphans might hold that title now. But in the end, we've paid dearly for it. And despite that propaganda and still pride, I can only stand in awe while staring down the home and the jackals, the siblings that are one step away from parenthood. Despite not having set foot on the planet yet, I'm already extremely envious of those beautiful ships. I can only wonder where Adastra would be if we cooperated better. The Pharaoh and Brunius talk amongst themselves, leaving me to absorb the moment. I'm only snapped out of it when I hear Viteris with his reedy, rapid-fire voice nearing the spot that the Pharaoh and I stand. Meanwhile, Amicus's deeper, calmer tones give one-worded answers. I finally pull away from the window in time to see the two of them come around the bend in the corridor, Amicus looking annoyed while Viteris looks a bit excited and agitated.
Massive. Jackals spread all over the land and all sustained with renewable energy and recycled water.
Oh, indeed. Then Amicus spots me and perks up.
They've vested their own planets.
Yes, Scipio, I wanted to...
They've harnessed the power of their entire star with structures 100 times larger than our largest construction projects.
A terrorist, please.
Imagine if we could even achieve a fraction.
A terrorist! Stop for a moment, please.
Of course, Amicus.
Hello, Scipio. I've just come to learn that we'll be meeting the Pharaoh upon our landing. We best go over our objectives one final time before starting our assignment.
To be continued. I hope you enjoyed that second look at Khemia. And that's definitely was a lot of fun to read whenever you played it. So when the next public update comes out, I'll be doing it as soon as I can. And I wasn't expecting this one to be out today, so my original plan was to record Tyson's Day 15 on Password today. But I put that back for Khemia. So next weekend will be Tyson's Day 15 on Password, definitely. I will get that done, and you can catch up that. But if you can't wait, then Dirk the Red Panda streamed it the other day, so check out his channel if you'd like to see that one in Password. And for now, and from the orbit of Khemia, bye for now.